Hello and welcome to the Practical Prayer Podcast pre-show on New Thought Media Network. I am Bill Marchiony. I am here today without Carol, and she is unavailable, so I'm going to wing it on my own today. You might notice that there's a couple of books missing over my shoulder here, and I'll get into that in just a second. Set this up for the folks who are watching live on New Thought Media Network or watching the recording, is that you are free to put a comment in on your social media, and I get to respond to it in real time. Or if you're watching the recording, you can always go to the website, bethelight.com, be-the-light.com, and like it says right over there, and you can put your questions or comments or prayer requests or ideas in there, and we will get those, address them in much the same way. So usually Carol and I chat for a little while about what we're going to talk about, and since she's not here and that conversation has been going on in my mind, which is very active anyway, let's just go ahead and start the podcast.
A practical prayer is a prayer that works.
These discussions between Reverend Bill Marchiony and Carol Lawrence dive into the details of how it works and how to work it.
Reverend Bill is a New Thought minister and the author of Practical Prayer for Real Results.
Your new life begins with a new thought.
Carol Lawrence is on a spiritual quest, finding the New Thought teaching after decades on the pulpit in 3 different traditional denominations.
I've got some questions.
Together, they're exploring the philosophy and activities that come together from many of the world's religions to create the practical spirituality that is New Thought.
Welcome to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I am Reverend Bill Marchiony. This week, appearing solo. Carol is off engaged in other things. So on these rare occasions, I have an opportunity to talk about the stuff that piques my interest. And maybe it's things that I've been thinking about lately, or some of my favorites. So this is kind of a greatest hits. The main book that I used when learning about New Thought technique is The Science of Mind by Ernest Holmes, which some people call the Science of Mind Bible. And I even have one of them in with the gold edging and the leather cover that makes it look like a Bible. And in it, Ernest Holmes says a lot of really, really important, valuable, insightful things. Ernest Holmes, just to reestablish, in my mind, is the synthesist. So he studied all sorts of world religions and New Thought and spiritual practices, and he put all the pieces together. And he was the one who came up with the formula for practical prayer, which he called spiritual mind treatment, and wrote a bunch of books, including 2 different versions of his Science of Mind, which is the religious science textbook. The original one was very simple, straightforward, kind of short, and then 12 years later he expanded and expounded upon it and made it more rich and detailed, and some people say more confusing. The way that he starts out the entire textbook, the very beginning of it, he talks about how one day science and religion will walk hand in hand into the future, which is lovely, and this was 100 years ago, and we're kind of not quite there yet, but it's still a great aspirational idea. And what I'm going to talk about today is what I simply refer to as page 52. Because page 52 and 53 have on them some of the most inspiring, compelling, and for some people confusing notions. So he says, there is no doubt about the immutability and the availability of the law. He's talking about the creative law. The law is infinite. It is right where we happen to be at any given time. It occupies all space and fills every form with differentiations of itself. The law also flows through us because it flows through everything. And since we exist, it must be in and through us. This is the crux of the whole matter. Infinite and immutable as the law is, ever present and available as it must be, the potential possibility of all human probability, it must flow through us in order to manifest for us. So he's talking about the creative law of the universe. And I like to talk about the creation stories. So everybody has a creation story, how they believe all of this came into being. And even if we have different creation stories, we're probably talking about the same thing in different language. My 2 favorite examples are the Judeo-Christian scripture in Genesis, it starts out with, in the beginning there was darkness and void, and God said, let there be light. Well, if there was void and God, then all there was God. And God said, let there be, and something responded, and there was. In the initial instant, let there be light, and there was light. And that's the creative process unfolding, and the creative power of the universe being demonstrated. The law is the one that said yes when the infinite said, let there be light. And the answer is always yes. So as we set a conscious intention, as anyone sets a conscious intention, whether it's one that they're aware of or one that's in their subconscious, so it's acting on something that they don't know that they are particularly believing, the law is responding and bringing that into experience. The law always says yes. So that's the creative law that he's talking about, because everything comes from that one creative source. The other story is the Big Bang. The scientists talk about the Big Bang. You'd be an atheist to understand the Big Bang, that there was a singularity 14.2 billion years ago, as best we can tell currently, and for some reason it exploded. And everything that exists everywhere in this manifest universe has evolved from that one infinite explosion. So we are all part of the one. And it's the same story, whether we're talking about the scripture or the science, it's the same story. We are all part of that one. We are all part of that creative process. We all have, it's our inherent nature, not available to us. What we are is that infinite presence taking our own particular form. As he says, it must flow through us in order to manifest for us. On page 52, he goes on to say, it has been proved that by thinking correctly and by a conscious mental use of the law of mind, we can cause it to do definite things for us, through us. By conscious thinking, we give conscious direction to it, and it consciously or unconsciously responds to our advance along the line of our conscious or subjective direction. So we have an intention, an idea, a belief, and the law responds. That's pretty powerful. That's how we get to create our lives. He goes on, it must and will respond to everyone because it is a law and is no respecter of persons. Love that line. It is no respecter of persons. The rain falls on the just and the unjust is what he's kind of repeating there. It is no respecter of persons. We are surrounded by an intelligent force and substance from which all things come, the ultimate essence in the invisible and subjective world of all visible and objective forms and conditions. It is around us in its original state, ready and willing to take form through the impulse of a creative belief. It works through us, it works for us by flowing through us. This law we did not create, this law we cannot change. We can use it correctly only as we understand and use it according to its nature. That's really powerful. That's saying that we are creating our experience according to our beliefs. And usually when we say that, people say, well, what about the horrible things that happen in my life? What about the things that I don't want? What about the things that are just showing up that are unpleasant or undesirable? This is the part of page 52 that starts turning your head around a little bit. Hence, it follows that if we believe that it will not work, it really works by appearing to not work. When we believe that it cannot and will not, then according to principle, it does not. But when it does not, it still does, only it does according to our belief that it will not. This is our own punishment through the law of cause and effect. If we believe it's not going to happen, then it doesn't happen. And it's not happening because the law isn't working. It's because the law is responding to our belief, which is that it won't happen. Saying, yep, not going to happen. And I say the law that always responds with a yes. It always says yes. And if we think I am prosperous, then it says, yes, I am prosperous. And if we have a belief that we've had all of our lives that we're not prosperous, there's not enough, that we're going to live in lack, and that's our belief, then the law says yes, and gives us an unlimited supply of lack. Oh. Well, there it is, summed up on page 52 of the Science of Mind textbook by Ernest Holmes. If we believe that it will not work, it really works by appearing to not work. When we believe that it cannot and will not, then according to the principle, it does not. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, it's possible that that means that you're creating your life experience right now and all the time. And I have pointed out on a few occasions that you can tell what's in your belief system. You can tell what you believe. There's There's a guidance system that will inform us as to what is actually in our consciousness, what we believe. And it's called your life. Because if it is done unto you as you believe, then whatever you believe is what's being done. That's what's going on in your life right now. Your life is a full-size topographical map of your belief system. And if you look at your life and you don't like it, then the place to go and make a change is not in the world around you. Don't try to adjust the map. What we want to do is adjust the consciousness and then let the map change accordingly. And if you think it's not going to work, then you're right. And if you think that you can't change, then you're right. And if you think there's a possibility for something new happening, then you're right. And that technique of opening ourselves up to new possibilities, of letting go of our attachment to the stuff that we believe, whether we know why we believe it or we don't know why we believe it, is the opportunity for creating transformation in our lives. We're going to take a break and then going to dive into how we do that and how we get away from that cycle of continuing in the trap of manifesting what we don't believe, the law responding by not doing because we don't think it's going to do.
Learn to put practical prayer to work in your life. The steps are simple to learn and let you begin to get real results to create the life of your dreams immediately. Reverend Bill Marchiony's widely acclaimed book, Practical Prayer for Real Results, gives you a clear summary of the New Thought principles behind practical prayer and the series of easy-to-understand steps found in the most effective prayers from religions and spiritual practices all over the world and throughout history. Practical prayer is not a replacement for your religion or practice. It's a technique to make the work you do in consciousness even more effective. The book includes 40 prayers on various topics that you can adapt as needed and use as your own. Practical Prayer for Real Results is available in paperback, Kindle, and audiobook on Amazon or at b-the-light.com. That's b-the-light.com.
Welcome back to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I'm Reverend Bill Marchiony, running solo today, and Carol is off doing something different. And we're talking about my favorite passage, my favorite page in the Science of Mind textbook, page 52. It's the title of this episode, it's page 52. And it has an awful lot of the power and also the explanation of why the creative process sometimes doesn't seem to work. And I'll read it again. If we believe that it will not work, it really works by appearing to not work. When we believe that it cannot and will not, then according to principle, it does not. But when it does not, it still does, only it does according to our belief that it will not. This is our own punishment through the law of cause and effect. He continues on page 53. We do not enter in because of our doubts and fears. It is not a punishment imposed upon us by the Spirit of God, but an automatic result of failing constructively to use the law of God. Pretty straightforward. God does not punish the mathematician who fails to obtain the right answer to his problem. The thought of the unsolved problem does punish him until he applies the right principle and thus secures the desired result. Thus, sin and punishment, righteousness and salvation are logical reactions to the universe, to the life of the individual. Taking all of the hard, wretched, challenging, difficult, impossible things that happen in our lives and realizing that it's a math problem and that we have not been applying the principle in a way that brings us the solution that we're looking for, it takes a lot of the energy out of that. Takes a lot of the fire out of that to understand that we are working with a principle, and the principle is always saying yes, and all of the good that we are seeking is available. And if it's not showing up, then it's possibly because we're not looking in the right direction. It's possible because we're not going to be willing to accept it when it shows up, or any other number of reasons. When we set up the terrain, if we believe it's not going to work, then it works by appearing not to work. If there's something showing up in your life that you don't like, there's something that makes you believe that that needs to be in your life. And sometimes these things are things that we've learned, that we understand the belief that we have. Sometimes there are things that we learn from our family. There are people who go into therapy and understand that there were some comments that friends or family members, or something that dad said when they were little, that got incorporated into their belief system. You'll never be a good thus and such. You'll never figure out this. Somebody told a kid early that they're stupid, and they continue to believe that they're stupid for the rest of their lives, even though they're not necessarily stupid, and they can actually do some very wonderful, intelligent, smart things. So what we want to be able to do is understand that those beliefs are operating, and they show up because that's what's in our life. And when they show up, we can look at them and understand that we want to have a different belief. Now, we can't just say, I'm prosperous, and continue to have that belief that we're living in lack and that there's never enough. The story of if the family didn't have enough growing up. And the lesson learned was that there's always going to be a struggle. There's never going to be sufficiency. It's always going to be a rat race. The reason to have a job is because you got to go work and sacrifice yourself so that you can put food on the table. If we have that consciousness, then that's the experience that we get to have in life. However, once we realize that when I'm getting up to do a job and I'm going to work, and that's what I've been doing just because it's the drudgery and it delivers a paycheck, once I realize that my employer is not looking to give me a paycheck, they're actually looking to accomplish something, and the reason that I have the job is because the employer finds that I'm a valuable resource to be able to get that done, and we change our mindset to understand that our boss or our manager or the owner of the company needs us so that they don't have to do the work themselves. They need some way of getting this task taken care of in a way that would be as good as they would do it, or sufficient, so that they can continue doing the things that they want to be doing and move the business forward and move everybody's lifestyle forward and support the entire endeavor. When we realize that we're part of that system, that we are actually a gift, that we are being compensated and rewarded for the gifts that we are sharing, for their willingness to give our time and our talents and our attention to a situation or a circumstance that the employer wants to have, it changes that equation. It changes around the feeling and the belief. And then when I am sharing my gifts and I'm being rewarded for the wonderful way that those gifts are being received, it becomes much more of a circulation idea. And oh, by the way, as soon as we get into that mindset and that awareness, then the boss notices that this person can do more. Let me see if they can step up their game a little bit. And then there's more success. And in a lot of cases, there's a promotion or there's a raise or there's some sort of advancement. And we get to continue sharing our gifts in a way that brings more good into our lives and into the lives of our employers and our clients and the customers and the entire supply chain or ecosystem. That is a completely different perspective than I gotta go to work so I can earn a paycheck so I can put food on the table. In the first one, we are giving away our belief that we're giving and offering anything valuable. And the transformation that happens is that we realize that we're part of a process, and the paycheck is a side effect. Paying for groceries and a house to live in and the other things that are a part of our life are side effects of the fact that we are in that giving process. And giving requires receiving. So just by changing that belief that we got to go to work and do something for the boss to make something happen, can change everything. And by the way, as you know, it shows up in every area of our lives. When we talk about practical prayer, I like to say that there are 5 different areas that all the prayers tend to fall into these 5 different categories. We shorthand it as health, wealth, love, work, and spirit. Health is everything about our physical experience, our body, our comfort, our health, our vitality, being able to move and do and act and engage in a way physically that we enjoy. This all comes under that first category of health. Wealth, not just about money. It's about enoughness. Because if you have somebody who has all the money in the world, but they're unhappy, they're not particularly focused on the money, they're focused on the happiness. It's about having enoughness. It's about having sufficiency. And it's not about having an unlimited supply, because it's an infinite universe that's divvied up into lots of different pieces. So there is plenty of energy, there's plenty of resource, there's plenty of everything in this universe, there's plenty of everything right here on planet Earth. So it's not a supply problem, it's a distribution issue, and what we get to do is be in alignment. What's that enoughness for me? If you go to an all-you-can-eat buffet, do you have to eat everything that's there in order for it to be a successful meal? Or is it the fact that you get to choose and then be engaged in the process of selecting what's going to fill you and nourish you and feed you and satisfy you without needing to have all the rest of it there. It's all available. It's also possible to go to an all-you-can-eat buffet and sit down at your table and not get up and go to the buffet table and remain hungry. So we're actually participating in the process. Third one is love, which is all about our relationships. It's our beloved relationships with our romantic partners. It's about our families. It's about our families of origin. It's about our friends, our companions, our neighbors, the people who we're in community with, everybody who we have contact with. Love is how we are able to connect with ourselves and with each other. The fourth one is work, and that's not actually the job that you're doing, because as I just described, it's not about the job. It's about the creativity. It's about how you're sharing your gifts with the world. And it is about that inspiration of how you can share those gifts with the world. I have the blessing and the curse. I think I'm on career number 10. I've done all sorts of different careers. It's not changing from one job to another. It's changing from one industry to another, from one pastime to another, from zany radio disc jockey to advertising copywriter to technology guy to minister. And they're all different ways of taking that same skill set that I've had for my entire life and applying them differently. My work, my sharing of my creativity is the ability that I have to bring those gifts into the world in a way that's going to be helpful and uplifting for me. And the fifth one, which has an asterisk on it, is spirit. And the asterisk is because we can't be any more spiritual than we already are. Because as I mentioned in our description of the creation stories, there is one creative source, one spirit, one love, one presence that is sharing itself, individualizing itself, particularizing itself as all of its creation. And that includes me and each of us. So we are already as spiritual as we are ever going to be, 100% spiritual in human physical form right now. But sometimes we forget. Sometimes it's not obvious. In which case that prayer is for a deeper awareness of our true spiritual nature, of feeling more connected to the truth of the spirituality that we are. So those are the things that we get to pray for, and it works in any combination. And a practical prayer is a way of selecting something that we want to have show up in our lives and aligning ourselves with the possibility that it can exist. And there's an infinite creative power that's creating everything, so it might as well create that. And it's creating it as us in the same way that it created us. And then using that claim of claiming the good that we're seeking to be able to invite that into our lives. And if we disbelieve it, if we're in the middle of one of these things that we describe on page 52, if we believe that it will not work, it really works by appearing to not work. If we're in one of those, then when we do that very powerful realization step, then our subconscious is going to kick something back and say, I don't believe that. No. I call it the yeah buts. I say, I am prosperous. And the voice in the back of my head says, yeah, but there's no money and it's the first of the month and rent's going to be due. I am prosperous. Yeah, but the credit cards are maxed out. That's a way of understanding what's in our belief system. And by noticing that that's what's in our belief system, we can address that one head on and say, yeah, the thought that I'm not prosperous because I'm being punished and there's not good available is preposterous. It's an infinite universe of limitless resource. This is a creative power that can create galaxies that's created me, and it can just as easily create some situation where the mortgage is going to get paid, the rent's going to be taken care of, the credit cards are going to be paid off. And then claim the good again. Go through the process again. And listen for that little voice. Because if it tells me that I don't believe it, then we're back onto page 52. So what I want to do is make sure that I'm not the mathematician who's applying the wrong arithmetic and not getting the answer that he wants or she wants. What I want to do instead is say, this is not the answer that I'm looking for. Let me go back and work the problem from a different direction. Because the answer is going to be yes. Going to take another break, and when we continue, we will we'll do a practical prayer, and it's going to be about all of the above. Are you ready to get results? Now, that's not a rhetorical question. Are you ready to get results? R-U-R-2-G-R. That's actually the abbreviation for the steps in a practical prayer: recognition, unification, realization, gratitude, and release, with a couple of extra steps in there in case some doubt creeps in along the way. RUR2GR. This class is about the prayer technique that's common to all of the spiritual practices and religions in the most effective prayers that they have. And by effective, I mean that the prayer works. It actually creates a change in the experience of the person doing the prayer. It gets a result. We're going to begin with theory, and then we're going to take it into practice. By the end of the class, you will have your very own practical prayer that will help create transformation in your life. Welcome back to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I'm Reverend Bill Marchiony. This week solo. Carol is off doing other things now. And we've been having a wonderful diatribe about page 52 of the Science of Mind textbook, where Ernest Holmes says that if we believe that it will not work, it really works by appearing to not work. When we believe that it cannot and will not, then according to principle it does not. But when it does not, it still does, only according to our belief that it will not. So that applies in all of our lives. And what we get to do when what we say we want is not what's showing up in our lives is to dive down into our belief system and understand that what we've been claiming is incongruent with what we believe. And we get to change that belief just a little bit. Sometimes it's wholesale and dramatic. People come to the realization, oh my gosh, I've been believing that. That's not true. And they may know where the original idea got planted, or they may not. It doesn't really matter. In psychotherapy, you go through and you find the story and you understand the story and you make friends with the story and you get to dissect the whole story. And in practical prayer and healing prayer, what we do is we just understand the belief that came out of whatever the story was and let go of our attachment to the belief. The story is still there. I mean, that's what forgiveness is. Forgiveness is not forgetting the story. Forgiveness is taking the power away from the story and saying, that's not what I'm going to live by anymore. I'm going to live in a different manner. And it doesn't matter that my parents didn't believe that we would ever have enough money. It doesn't believe that somebody thought I wasn't smart enough to go to college. It doesn't matter that somebody didn't think that I was ever going to have a wonderful relationship. I get to have those things, and I get to dispense with those beliefs that were implanted through whatever process they were and invite something new. So that's our practical prayer today. Our prayer is knowing that highest and best is unfolding in a specific way for each of us and for all of us. And it's because we know that there is one infinite creative power, one divine presence, one limitless love that has been sharing itself as its creation since the very beginning of time. It is sharing itself as me, right here and right now, and as each one who is listening to this prayer. Each is an individualization of that one infinite power and presence, with access to all of the good, all of the love, all of the prosperity, all of the life, all of the harmony, all of the goodness that's available anywhere. It is all available everywhere. It is an infinite universe. There is no limitation. Having more love show up in my life doesn't take love away from anywhere else in the universe. Same thing with anything else that I'm desiring to have in my life. The balance on planet Earth is pretty negligible, and the interstellar balance of the universe is pretty much unchanged. All of the good that any of us is desiring is available right now and always. So knowing that that infinite creative power that creates everything has created me and each of us and all of the activities and experiences that we have, I know it is possible for that infinite creative power to create something new and wonderful and better than it's ever been. Different for each of us, but wonderful and uplifting for all of us. That is definitely possible. So I invited an awareness of whatever the disbelief might be that has kept this from happening in the past. I invite that in. I invite that in so that we can address it and understand it and dispense with it. Because those false beliefs have no power. They are like an object that's blocking the sun. It doesn't make the sun go away. It simply keeps us from seeing the light. And as soon as we are able to move around the object, to circumvent it, to change our perspective or our position, that bright light of love is shining. We can see that sunlight. And the same thing is happening with each of us. as our awareness, as our consciousness, as our beliefs come into greater alignment with our desires, the law is responding and bringing that desired experience into being. Good and more good, unfolding for each of us in our own way. And I am grateful for it. I'm grateful for the good. I'm grateful for the wonderful ways that it's showing up. I'm grateful for the remarkable ease and grace with which this happens. There's no need for delay or difficulty. There is simply the opportunity for this love to unfold. And so with gratitude for all of this good already happening and continuing, I speak this word and I release it into the creative law that creates everything. And I know it's now creating this. It's already happening. And so it is.
The Practical Prayer Podcast with Reverend Bill Marchiony and Carol Lawrence is a production of BeTheLight.com.
B-dash.
The Practical Prayer Podcast with Reverend Bill Marchiony and Carol Lawrence is a production of BeTheLight.com.
B-the-light.com.
Where you can find more information about practical prayer for real results.
Our theme is by Music of Wisdom. You can learn about the spiritual community of New Thought Philadelphia with daily guided meditations,
Weekly celebrations of spirit,
and Reverend Bill's classes in practical spirituality
at newthoughtphilly.org.
Yeah, that was an interesting little glitch. I seem to have turned the closing off a little early, but thank you for bearing with me. Thank you for playing along. It has been wonderful to share one of my favorite sections, the Science of Mind textbook, with you, page 52, and just shorthanded at that. If you don't have a copy of the Science of Mind textbook, you can get it on Amazon. You get it at bookstores. It is a wonderful book. It is not the easiest thing that Ernest Holmes ever wrote. This thing called life is probably the most delightful book that he wrote. But there are a lot of them, and there are a lot of ways that you can dive into this stuff. And of course, I mentioned the Practical Prayer for Real Results book that you can take a look at as well. That's going to wrap it up for this week. This is possibly the shortest episode of the Practical Prayer Podcast. Woohoo! Thank you very much for being here, and Carol will be back with me next week.
Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hefferland Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Kitchener, Unity Spiritual Center Ottawa, Om Center for Spiritual Living, Satya Center, Begin Within Ministries, Center for Spiritual Living North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and the Center for Spiritual Living Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for being part of the New Thought Media Network. Please like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring.